guess I should do an intro. Hello.
That's a good one. I like this intro.
Shut up. Oh, God. So I am actually a little hungover. Anyway.
Oh, tell me that story.
Oh, well, what happens? I drank too much. And it caused
I thought that would be like, people in bars with cocaine.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't on travels as usual. No, this was just at home, and we were like, what if we had a bottle of wine and then another bottle of wine and a curry and see what happens the next day. And curry was good, wine was good, morning was bad.
Was it a green curry?
It was not. It was an Indian curry. It was a chicken rah-rah, which is a thing. It's a delicious thing.
A bit of a rah-rah.
Yeah. That's why there's a benefit of ordering online. I didn't have to say that out loud to a person. Hello, can I get the chicken rah-rah? Oh, God.
In general, I feel incredibly awkward when Thai or Indian, and I love that they put the original names on the menu, but then I feel like my entire order is just me butchering another language with my ignorance.
Yes, yeah. I tried to learn Italian once, and then for a while I was that guy in the restaurant pronouncing things with an Italian accent, until I realized that I hate that guy. And then I stopped.
Oh yeah, please, can I have the cacio e pepe?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that. Yeah. Woo! I was doing like the Mario noises as well, because obviously he's the world's most famous Italian
and the most authentic one as well.
Exactly. I've got a worry that I want to get off my chest.
Oh boy.
So my other half snores. She's a snorer.
Are you a snorer?
I don't. Well, that's the question, you see, because I hate the fact that my other half snores. It's because I feel like I'm a light sleeper, or certainly light to get to sleep. And so the whole snoring thing.
I mean, yeah, you said in a previous episode that the boiler kept you up. So, yes, that sounds like you're a light sleeper.
Exactly. Now, recently, my other half has been telling me that I have been snoring.
Ooh.
And I'm becoming what I hate. Like this, it's stressing me out.
First Italian, now snoring.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been worrying me because I don't want to be keeping her awake, and like it's and obviously it feels like a thing that happens when you get older as well. So it's kind of reminding me that I'm getting older. But here's the thing that happened. I got up in the middle of the night for the toilet, because another reminder that I'm getting old.
Yeah, what's next? Are you going to start being a Nigel Farage fanboy?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's next on the list. We'll see how long that takes. But went to the toilet, got back into bed, and my other half rolled over, went... She made this really angry noise, and then punched me.
Is that a common occurrence in your relationship?
Well, but here's the thing. She snored, got annoyed about it, and punched me. So now I'm wondering, am I actually a snorer? Or is she just dreaming about me snoring?
I have never heard myself snore, or know of anyone who has perceived themselves snoring.
Oh, no, I have. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and so this is the thing. I do know that I occasionally snore because I wake myself up snoring. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
At least I'm waking myself up.
Yeah, you stop yourself. So where's the punching coming from? Clearly you would interrupt yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, like I thought she was punching me through the night, but then she was away for a week and I woke up with a black eye. So, I'm just beating myself up through the night.
Full Fight Club mode.
Yeah. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Off the Main Thread. I'm Jake.
Wait, is that how we start? Do we do intros?
I don't know, man. This is how we're starting this one.
Are you the guy who designed Service Worker?
I am actually, yeah. Oh, do you know what? There's been some interesting stuff around Service Worker. Like they've added static routes.
Wait, that has
to
happened?
Yeah, it's landing. It's in the latest Chrome. Yeah,
Oh,
this. We're now doing a topic in the middle of the intro. Which,
sure. Go.
Like, who are you?
I'm Surma.
Hi, Surma. That's good. As usual, or when we remember to, I'm going to thank Shopify for paying for all of this and the hosting and letting us do it. They don't ask us to say that, but we do. We do like Shopify. We like Shopify enough to both work there.
Yeah, just about enough. Yeah.
Just about enough.
All right, let's go straight off the main thread. Tell me about these new static routes.
Yeah, well, look, I wasn't planning to talk about this, so it's really thin on the ground in terms of what's in my head. So the idea is, it's in the latest Chrome, which is Chrome, whatever the latest number is. Do you know what? Let's do some.
Oh, I thought we were going to do like, so in Chrome release, insert Chrome release, and then we can do like a nice AI voice insert.
Edit it. Oh, look, if we're going to go off the main thread, there is this, someone posted it, like, you know how articles sometimes have a button on for to read the article out loud?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, there is someone posted one of these on X, formerly known as Twitter, where and it's, this is the article has generated this. This is not like another tool doing this, but the article contains like the odds of something are 1 in like 1,000,000,000, like and then like a lot of zeros. All right, and just nothing prepares you for how that is read out. Because the voice is pretty good, pretty human like, and it's just and the chances of that are 1 in just. Hey, look, I'll post a link to that because that is.
Yes.
I'm not doing that justice, but it's making me laugh just thinking about it.
I was really impressed with OpenAI's text to speech, which did English pretty well. That you just give it German, it just recognizes it's German. It sounds pretty damn good. I really haven't used it that much at all. I just played around with it for like 10 minutes. But we've been using OpenAI for our transcriptions on the podcast, and they go
a little hit and miss.
They go off the rails sometimes, and I'm kind of curious if the same would happen with text to speech. I kind of doubt it because it's probably not more deterministic in that sense. But yeah, if you look at our transcripts, I've tried to make sure they're all good. But apparently I miss it sometimes, and then you get odd, as Monica called it.
One of us is having a breakdown where it's just one of us going, yes, 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 yes. Which sounds great. It just looks like you're interrupting me every other word to say yes, which I like the enthusiasm. You should actually do it.
Yeah, I like your topic. It's called active listening, okay?
Right, Let's get off this thread back onto the
pop it off the stack.
Thread. Pop that off the stack. Chrome 123. That's why I did read 123 earlier, but I was like, well, I can't be 123 because that's just numbers in order, isn't it? Like, it's also a legitimate Chrome version. Yes, the Service Worker Static Routing API. This is where in your install event you say, hey, for requests that look like this, do this. And this is an API sketch that we made in like the very early days of Service Worker before it landed in any browser. We were like, we probably need this at some point, and finally, it's actually being done. The API shape isn't exactly the same, but it's so you can say, yeah, requests like this, just get it from the cache. Or, requests like this just go to the network. And
the motivation here is it allows the browser to skip creating the Service Worker JavaScript scope as the Service Worker is sleeping and just like have that as a static loop. It's faster, right? Especially when you open a page after a long time. The Service Worker isn't alive. Everything is like, the cache is on disk, not in memory and everything. So this just makes a significant speed up possible.
Yes, it is. It's a significant speed up. So we did see like a lot of companies try and use Service Worker as a performance primitive, but it never worked out because, it has to create a worker. It has to run JavaScript. I mean, we knew it was not going to work because this is why we sketched this API out in the early days. It just, we couldn't get implementers to agree to do it, but that is happening now. So yes, hopefully we can see, like, you'll see service workers being faster in general, but it certainly brings the capabilities of the being.
Is it on you to do progressive enhancement, as in like to re-implement the same routes in your service worker imperative code?
Yes, it would be for the time being. Like, yeah, until all browsers support this routing API, you would have to. Oh, it seems like the kind of thing that tooling could actually do a pretty good job of.
I was going to say, it seems like a little mini library that you import into your service worker, and you just load that. Okay, where do you declare those static routes? In your manifest, in a separate file? How does it work?
No, it's all in the install event.
In the event. Okay.
So you are still using JavaScript. It's one of those things where, like, the term declarative kind of is such a, there's a lot of gray area in the term, because it's declarative because you're saying it up front. But you are saying it up front with JavaScript. So you could, if you wanted, create your own system where you fetch a JSON file and then turn that into these calls for adding routes, and also, like, then put that data in IndexedDB, so you can then do the same thing in your fetch event or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, the good thing is that if it's already basically in imperative code in your install event, that means that dictionary, I guess, of route to cache entry is already in your JavaScript code. Yeah. So then reusing it in your actual fetch handler is almost trivial.
Exactly.
Like you already have to have it in that code scope anyway. But the browser can do the smarts if available. So I think it's actually in this case quite the right choice for the API design.
Yeah, so the way you match URLs is using URL patterns, URL pattern is still like a Chromium only thing. So whatever
is it?
Yeah, but there are polyfills for it. So yeah. Anyway,
I mean, yeah, the polyfill is small. I know that Safari doesn't have it. I thought Firefox did, but
no, unfortunately not.
Yeah. Well, who knows if they still have engineering resources in Safari to actually implement this.
Oh yeah, we should. Well, look. I did my shitting on Safari episode last time, so I'm gonna give it a break this time.
Let's give it a month and see what happens, and then we do part 2. The EU strikes back, or the Department of Justice strikes back, or whoever strikes back. That's the one who strikes back.
Exactly. All right.
So should we? I mean, I was gonna say, should we talk about the web? But you kind of talked about the web. But should we talk about the main thread web?
This is the thing, like, we started, or just before we started recording, I was like, well, I took over the last episode completely, so it's your turn. And here we are, like, 15 minutes in, and it's just been me talking. So
yeah, you're just an attention.
Yeah, just, like, just give me a break, Surma. Like, I want to listen. I want to listen to something. So,
all right, then
your turn.
Shut up.
Right. Okay.
And I thought I was going to talk a bit about... I was struggling to find a good title, but I think I'm going to go with Canvas-based web apps.
Ooh. Yeah.
Right? Because this kind of got started because I was talking about Bevy, and I'm playing around with Bevy still. And the game engine for Rust, and it has an ECS pattern, and blah, blah, blah. We talked about all that. But one thing that's interesting is that it runs on, macOS, Windows, Linux, but it also runs on the web because it compiles to WebAssembly and hooks into WebGPU. And so basically it just creates a canvas, gets the WebGPU context, hooks into the browser's input events like keyboard, mouse, pointer, gamepad, whatnot, pipes that all into your WASMified Rust. The game engine runs as per usual, and then issues the WebGPU commands to draw to the canvas. And, that's cool. And I think for games that makes sense, because the games don't use the DOM. The DOM is not, in the vast majority of cases, not the right abstraction to do games. You want to do pixels and triangles and shaders, and so they're usually canvas bound. You
can do Flappy Bird with divs for sure, but it's not the fastest way to do it.
Yeah, and even there is the question, like, is it actually the ergonomic way or the flexible way if you want to, because games also, they optimize heavy for iteration. You do play testing and have to do like little tweaks and visual adjustments. And I think sometimes the assumptions of the DOM come from document land, right? Like they're made for documents. And I think for games that is often just not a very good fit. So I think in this case, going, Canvas for games makes sense. I think in this case, even going via WebAssembly makes sense because you're in Canvas land anyway. So even if you wrote it in JavaScript, there is a lot of things you would have to, write and reinvent because you're really just like controlling pixels. And so WebAssembly can offer you benefits there.
The only counter I would give to that is that, we had decades of Flash games, and Flash is a scene graph, right? Like, which is the closest thing we have to that on the web is SVG. There were pixel-based things in Flash, and I guess some games were using them, but a lot of games were just moving, sprites around in a way you would like, doing animations in SVG. But yeah, I mean, that was also on the desktop era, so yeah, how that would perform on mobile, I don't know.
I mean, the Flash parallel is interesting because I remember, many of the Flash games that I played, and when I tried to look a little bit at Flash development, I never understood it at the time because I just didn't have the knowledge. But, you had the first thing you would build is a loading bar because these Flash games were sizable. And this is the same here, like the toy game I'm working on, the WASM binary is 35 megabytes. And WASM compresses well. It broadleys down to 6 megabytes, but that's still pretty heavy for people that are, bundle size obsessed like the two of us. That's a lot. I guess like, many websites spend 6 megabytes just on a GIF, but it's a lot.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
To be fair, like it's unoptimized, like ECS as a pattern doesn't really lend itself to tree shaking. You load plugins and then these functions run systems and they can't really tell whether there is any entities in your game that use the components these systems processing. So that's something where I could actually go in and probably rip out a lot of stuff and optimize a bit. Anyway, so this is again for games, and I think games also get a bit of a free pass. They're allowed to be a bit bigger. I mean, look at what AAA games are consuming on consoles. Not that you shouldn't care, but I guess downloading 6 megabytes for a good game is not outrageous, especially if you cache it well.
Oh, I love that thing where if I don't tend to do it anymore because of this, but when you actually buy a game on a CD and you're like, well, this is good because one of the advantages is all the data is right in my hand. So I'll just put the disc in and install it. And then afterwards it's like, I'm just going to download a little tiny update of 30 gigabytes. Yeah.
Yep, that's great.
Oh, okay.
Now, again, like games, sure, but it is also kind of tempting to start thinking about Bevy and similar things for apps, like for not like interactive 60 frames a second shooter thingies, but like apps with buttons and layouts. And after all, like Bevy uses CSS for layout, so like there's flex and grid and all these things, and it's kind of like, oh, I could just build my app with this, and you gain control at a level that in the browser you sometimes don't. I think, and for me, like my immediate intuition is that for an app, the benefit cost ratio is off. But it's worth looking at because there is, a couple of apps out there that kind of take this model. So this model can be successful. Like I guess most notably Figma works in this model where the big design area they have in the middle, that's a canvas and it's driven by WASM. I think it's interesting to point out that the UI around this big canvas where you see your elements and the different attributes, that is done in DOM.
Oh, interesting.
So they kind of do a mix and match approach. And I think that is because if you did it all in WASM, you have to reinvent a lot of wheels.
Oh, for sure. Like lots of mouse interaction stuff, which I guess they are somewhat doing as well. I'm actually just clicking around Google Doc here because I feel like Google Docs is Canvas. It looks, again, it's a mix. It seems like big areas of text are as just Canvas element.
Yeah, I think they said like the text rendering for big documents just wasn't working the way they needed to and couldn't control it enough. So I guess the text area might be different, but I guess the UI outside is still DOM. I don't know, like I vaguely remember something like that. But yeah,
it's weirdly chunked little bits of Canvas. Sorry, I'm now like, yes, all your toolbar buttons are DOM. Whereas the main text is a kind of chunks of canvas. All right. Well, that was fun. Sorry.
Interesting. I guess you would want to like cache the pages because most of them will be static. Like I don't know. I guess that would be an interesting deep dive to do at some point. But yeah, like I was playing out with Bevy and kind of realizing I get a lot of very interesting control, and I can avoid slow things that are slow in CSS because I have very granular control over like which algorithms to use, which cost to pay. But it also means you lose access to a lot of things that the browser has already done for you. Like, for example, Bevy implements a scene graph, which, the whole concept of you can have children elements on a parent element, and if you move the parent element, all the children move as well. The browser already has this logic in the DOM and CSS. It even has it for 3D. You can literally rotate a DOM element in 3D space, and the children will rotate the same way in 3D space. Yes. It's already there. But if you go Canvas, you have to re-implement all of that, where you propagate a change to a parent down to the children and vice versa. If the user clicks the mouse, you have to do hit testing. You have to figure out which element is currently under my mouse cursor. The browser has that logic built in where, the browser just gets, here are the mouse coordinates on screen, and the browser figures out, okay, that means this DOM element is the one that has been clicked.
Yes, and there's lots of subtlety there. Like, was this a tap on a interactive element, or was this a drag to scroll? And there's that is all just built into the browser for you.
Yeah.
But if you're handling scrolling yourself, if you're handling interactivity yourself, that is code you are going to write again.
Exactly.
And probably get it slightly different to the platform, because it's probably different between iOS and Windows and Mac and all of that.
And that's one of the parts where I really realized that this rabbit hole is really deep, because I was building a menu, the opening menu of a game where you have play, settings, options, and quit or something. And I realized, I have to intercept the arrow. Like, I have to listen to the arrow keys and then keep the state where the focus currently is and figure out what is the next element. And I realized I'm kind of like reinventing spatial navigation.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, if I were to make like a drop down, in browsers, when you have a drop down, you can start typing and it jumps to the value that starts with the same letters.
It's very different between platforms as well, but yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I was thinking, that is something that people in their browsers are probably used to, very specific behavior. And now you are building probably new behavior that doesn't match any of the browsers, or at best one of the browsers. So that's also something where you actually provide like this uncanny valley experience to your users if you go down this route.
Yeah, this is the tricky part with like customizable selects as well. Is like, right now browsers are free to show a select element however they want, and you see that with the difference between mobile and desktop.
Yeah.
Whereas, to create a customizable system, it's going to have to be somewhat the same.
I guess the point I make is this is all code that is going to be shipped, like has to go down the wire in your WASM to run. And that's, I think, where these 35 megabytes eventually come from, because there's all this code that is technically already in the browser, but you decide that you want full control and there's no way for you to reuse what the browser already has. You have to start from pretty much scratch. And yet I feel like there is a bit of like a trend, not a trend, but there are some people exploring this more and more, especially with WebAssembly becoming more capable, more integrated or integratable with browser APIs, that you can just, you can just use WebGPU from within WASM. I say just, there's a bit of magic happening, but you can do it, and it's not slow doing these back and forth calls between WASM land and browser land. So it's becoming more and more viable. And one platform, I guess, that is trying to see this through to the end is Flutter, right? Like that's the whole, you write your code. It's kind of write once, run everywhere again. But you write your app, you write it in Dart, and then you can build it to Android, iOS, web, and even desktop native kind of thing.
This is where I'm getting excited about this topic, because I remember looking at Flutter a while ago and not liking what I saw. And I know well, because of how they reinvent the world. And I'm interested to know if they've changed their practices.
Yeah, so I should, ask, like, I did look at Flutter in preparation for this, and I looked at some demos, and I want to talk about those, but obviously I am not an expert. I'm not involved in the Flutter ecosystem at all. But I will say I was kind of impressed. There's also things I don't like. But like in terms of, there are clearly things that are not perfect. There are things that are uncanny valley. But they have done a thorough job at as far as they could take it. So, and the thing what I always liked about Flutter, or what I was always jealous of, is that they just went with, you know what, we are gonna animate layout. Like the cardinal sin of web development, if you animate any CSS properties or layout, like margin or position or anything like that, like Paul Lewis will appear and slap you on the wrist because you are doing things slow. It's not on the compositor. And in Flutter, they're like, oh, we kind of just designed our layout system to handle doing layout on every frame. They can do it at 120 frames per second, which is kind of amazing when you think about, and this is something the demo that I found online shows, they have, similar to media queries, breakpoints where, you know, like on mobile, you have multiple sections underneath each other, but on a wider screen, they kind of shift next to each other. If you resize your window, it doesn't just snap. These boxes are animated into their new position. And that's slick. It looks really cool. Nice. And so yeah, it does work, and you get that across the platforms. Like no matter whether you're Android, iOS, or web, like that will work because they are taking full control at the lowest level. One thing that I found was really like ironic as I was looking at the showcase section on their website, which has like a little animation of logos of the companies that are using Flutter. And it's a 1200 by 1600 GIF that weighs 6 megabytes and looks really janky because it's 30 frames per second. And I was like, if you have the system that can compile to web, why are you doing this?
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, even then, you know, any video format would have been better than that GIF, right? Like,
probably.
Yeah.
This should be, I don't know, not AVIF, but an AV1. Or why not a Flutter app? It could be. It would probably be smaller.
Yeah,
definitely smaller than 6 megabytes. Anyway, so like I looked at, they have a couple of demos. I looked at the showcase demo for Material 3, and I'll link to this in our description. So that one is not WebAssembly. They compile your Dart to JavaScript and add all their runtime stuff, and then use CanvasKit to do the rendering. CanvasKit is kind of surprised me here because CanvasKit is Canvas compiled to WebAssembly. So like Skia, the engine that Chrome uses to render Canvas, if you compile that to WebAssembly, that's called CanvasKit. And I'm sure they have their reasons, but it's kind of weird to me that they're loading CanvasKit when you have the canvas in the browser. I'm assuming that CanvasKit offers you more control than what the browser Canvas currently offers.
Or it's a cross-platform thing, maybe, like the, you know.
Oh yeah, maybe it's that. But you know, like it's basically what it adds up to. This demo adds up to 2.5 megabytes. So it's 1.5 for the WebAssembly CanvasKit and 1 megabyte. So CanvasKit is WASM, but your code doesn't compile to WASM, your Dart code from your app. So yeah, and the CanvasKit WebAssembly is 1.5 megabytes, and your Dart compiled to JavaScript ends up being a megabyte. There is in their beta channel support for WebAssembly. It is currently, as far as I understand, Chrome only because they rely on WASM GC.
Oh, yeah.
So it allows them to not having to re-implement a garbage collector. I don't know if it performs faster or slower. I didn't benchmark it, but it is smaller a little bit. Rather than 2.5 megabytes, it's 2 megabytes, where your app code is now 700 kilobytes rather than a megabyte. And they use a new fork, I guess, of CanvasKit called SKWASM, which is quote-unquote only 1.1 megabyte. I'm assuming it's a bit more tailored to the use case, and they're probably removing some stuff that they don't need. Not quite sure, but that's just for fairness that they are working on a WebAssembly version. So I guess with these sizes, like the first load is definitely just going to be a bit meh compared to like a handcrafted DOM-based solution. But to their credit, like even the default template, when you get started, immediately ships with a service worker and caches all these static runtime thingies so that the second load is pretty snappy. Gotta give it to them. Like even though they are definitely, you know, transferring lots of data, they're doing their best to make that work. And so, yeah, I mean, what do you get for that kind of file size? It's, you get that animated layout that works. You resize the window and the things move around. It's really cool. Tab works. They rebuilt that.
Right.
Not only that you can focus through with tab, but they even have a bunch of like custom elements to integrate with the browser's ARIA roles and screen readability. It seems correct. It seems all right. I worry that it's not matching the browser's native tabbing behavior across browsers, because I don't think tabbing behavior is standardized.
No.
I'm not a screen reader user, so I don't know what that feels like for a screen reader user who might be used to a specific tabbing behavior on a normal web page, and now this one may be navigating it differently. I don't know if that will make screen reader users get lost or not. That's just a worry.
It's just so much code to do what's already there, Surma. It's making me sad.
It is, for sure. And that's the other side. Like, what do you lose? Like, one of the first things I noticed, you can't select text. There's all this.
Oh, right.
I think it's something you can build, or maybe you can have I don't quite, I'm sure that's been solved, where you can probably say this text should be selectable. But if you have, like a sidebar with menu entries, you can't select those texts. As far as I could tell, in input fields from Flutter, you don't get autocomplete. You definitely, extensions will not work if they usually have something, I don't know, censors bad words, or you have some custom color styling to, I don't know, maybe to address a site inhibition that you have, like, or Arc's new zapping feature, or not new, but Arc zapping feature, you can remove certain DOM elements or restyle them. All of this won't obviously work. And that makes me think, I'm guessing, does SEO even work with Flutter? Because there's nothing in text in the HTML. There is some text in the ARIA tree, but I'm not sure that's respected or consumed by crawlers.
Interesting.
Anyway, so this is not like to me like wanting to go Flutter is good or Flutter is bad. That's just like, as a platform that is doing this with, I suspect, lots of funding and engineering power and engineering expertise behind it. And this seems like the best they can do. That's, I think, it's an interesting signal of where we are at in this world. And that kind of reminded me of somewhat abstract proposal by Hixie that he put out a while ago. So I guess some people may not know Hixie. He's like the original author of the Asset 2 and Asset 3 tests. He was a spec author on HTML and CSS and came up with Pingback. And then until recently...
HTML5 was his, yeah.
Yeah. And until recently, he worked on Flutter. He left, I think, at the end of last year, but he worked on this. So that puts a bit into context, I guess, where he came up with this. Basically, what he was proposing, it's a public document, so I'll link to it in the description, is, he called it towards a modern web stack. I would call it a minimal web stack, but he was basically saying, what if we focused the platform standardization efforts towards 4 major API surfaces: WebGPU, WebAssembly, ARIA, and HID.
Right.
Which, if you think about Flutter, that makes sense. So you want rendering, you want code execution, you want, I guess, ARIA for SEO, but also accessibility, like kind of like reflection API, so that external systems can inspect what is kind of being shown on screen, a standardized way to represent what is on screen semantically speaking, and HID, human interface devices, to give the user input. I guess output isn't really in here. Like, there's no web audio, I just realized, or anything like that. I'm guessing that would also be part of it.
Yeah, you would want that. So it is just like taking all of the lowest level things we have on the web.
Yeah.
So I guess you would have file system API there at some point, but it's kind of like what is the lowest of low level? Yeah, it'd be interesting to know what the proposal there was for like storage and stuff like that. Like, do you want some kind of byte storage system? But maybe file system would give you that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, like origin file system access would probably be enough, and then extra permission if you want actual file system or something. I feel like we have a lot of the puzzle pieces are kind of there. I'm guessing the ARIA one is the one that's most lacking to actually integrate. And also in my head, it's like, yes, those are the lowest level primitives, and they should be as powerful and flexible as they can be. But what I think that should be, obviously, I think this is completely unrealistic at this point, also because for backwards compatibility. But I kind of feel like what would be cool is to work towards like a modular browser. Like again, like this is never going to happen at this point, but it feels kind of cool where yes, you have these low-level primitives, like the ones that Higgs suggested, but on top of that, you have a whole battery of kind of like standardized modules. You have your CSS cascade module, your CSS layout module, your DOM module. Basically anything that's a web standard would be a module that the browser provides and loads by default, but you as a developer, you could opt out of any individual module and just like not use it, or maybe provide your own replacement. So if you don't want to pay the cost for multipass layout, you could provide your own CSS layout module as a WebAssembly module. You want to go back to like VBasic script tags? Go for it. Just replace the JavaScript module with your VBasic module that is compiled to WebAssembly.
Oh, so VBasic as in Visual Basic?
Yeah.
I thought you were sort of regressing into German there. VBasic?
The basic. No, like the visual. But the script tag, well, it was script language VBasic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. VB script.
I never used it. I just remember that was a thing
Yeah.
where, you could do that.
Oof.
I don't think this is going to happen, and I'm not sure it is actually worth putting Steam behind this. But there were some developments in this direction. Like
Houdini. Right, there we go.
Yeah, like at least for CSS, it did try to like provide your own paint routine with CSS Paint Worklet, even though I think it was a bit cut off at the knees in terms of what it could do.
Yeah.
But they had plans for like augment the parser, provide your own CSS parser extension, or they had the layout worklet to provide your own layout where you could, I guess this would be interesting if it hasn't happened. It was never really fully specified. I think it was like a prototype behind the flag, but I think theoretically it could have allowed you to just make layout so cheap or fast that you could end up in a world like Flutter where you can just run layout in every frame. If you don't do floats and don't do intrinsic sizing and it's always single pass top down, that could have worked. But sadly, I think Houdini has not really made any progress. It's kind of stagnated. I think the focus is currently somewhere else.
It feels abandoned, doesn't it, at this point? But
yeah, a little bit.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because like every runtime CSS polyfill sucks, right? It is rubbish.
Yeah.
Like they're good enough for playing around with. They are not good enough for production because they are slow and there's booby traps everywhere, right? Like it's going to not behave like the real thing because just CSS is not extensible in
One of the last things I did when I was still at Google was writing a polyfill for container queries, which I was quite proud of because it was very small but did most of the things. And I put in the README, like, this is very much intentionally a pragmatic approach. Like, I want to solve the 80% use case for container queries without having to implement a full CSS engine. I think it did it all right. You know, the kind of thing where it's like, it's not going to work with cross-origin @import statements or anything like that. But like I said, it would be mostly for playing around with, not to actually high-fidelity polyfill the functionality, because it's nigh impossible with almost all CSS features.
Yeah, a little peek behind the curtain for folks there is that this... we would make those kind of polyfills to get people excited about features, to get people playing with them and testing them and saying what they liked and didn't like. The downside of it is we ended up with Chrome project managers going out and saying that this feature is now cross-browser because the polyfill exists. And that, we found that incredibly frustrating and just because we felt it was a lie, really. Like, it was really, misleading. So there was, before I left, we kind of wrote up what the rules for saying something is cross-browser, and part of that was to explicitly say, like, polyfills don't count unless they count as gold standard polyfill. And I wrote this definition, which basically meant the only thing that would pass a gold standard really would be little JavaScript methods being added, like if they come up with a new array method, because you can polyfill that 100%. Yeah, so these other polyfills which are kind of doing it, but it's going to be too slow for production, or it's going to be messy all around the place.
Would transpilation count? Like, you can have now async iterators if you run Babel first.
So I wanted transpilation to count, but I think others didn't, so I don't think it does count. But yeah, I think transpilation is sort of okay.
I don't think I have like a big hitting summary to end on with this. I just thought I find it a really interesting thought experiment to think about what if you could take more low-level control of how your apps are being consumed by the browser without having to reinvent all the wheels and ship down that code. It definitely, like in certain specific contexts, I think it is the right choice. Like did Figma make the right choice with going Canvas and WASM? I mean, they're doing the mix and match approach, but I'm assuming they did it for good reason. I feel like they would. It is a heavy lift to build the thing that they built.
I think if you were going to recreate Figma with, let's say, SVG, you're going to have to control tabbing anyway, because the layering of things. You would have to implement spatial navigation of sorts, right?
Yeah.
And trying to make sure the correct semantics are there for the text, and like things like arrows from one thing to another. I think the web doesn't have a ton to offer them there for that kind of thing. So
yeah,
going for WASM Canvas rather than SVG, like, it seems totally reasonable if they got a performance benefit from it. I don't think they're throwing away a lot of stuff that the browser gives them already, whereas I do feel that Flutter is. I worry I'm being too negative on Flutter, because, like, well, another peek behind the curtain. What would happen when we were at Chrome? The Chrome developers' Twitter account. We had the keys to that, but so did various marketing teams, and we would kind of wake up sometimes to find a tweet on the Chrome account essentially saying, you want to build any kind of web app, you should use Flutter and nothing else. And they'll be like, excuse me. And then, I'd just go in and delete it, and then there'd be a ton of fuss. Because like, I'm going to delete that, and then America will wake up, and then we can have a little chat about it. So, yeah, I used to get frustrated at that, especially because, like, the other thing that we were trying to say is, please don't re-implement everything the browser already has to end up shipping 2 megabytes to display a heading, So yeah, so I maybe should be more open-minded about it, but I do agree. Like,
no, like I think it's like for normal apps, like they literally, in Bevy as well, like you literally ship an entire font rasterization engine like that, and that's not trivial. Like, on one hand, amazing that Bevy has an implementation of that, where they read the font files and like rasterize all of that with hints and subpixel rendering. But at the same time, like, it's in the browser. Wouldn't it be cooler if we could hook into that?
Well, you can, right? You can like use a regular canvas element and write text to it. I imagine Bevy's not doing it for the same reason as Flutter. It's to be cross-platform. So to be cross-platform, it's easier for them to implement everything their way from scratch, because then it's the same.
I think for Bevy, it's actually more like it's an open source unpaid project until recently, where it's just like passionate people working, and that is just the easier thing to do to load a rasterization. What's it called? Is it called Harfbuzz?
Oh yeah.
The pretty much the de facto standard for font rendering, and they're having bindings to that. But I was thinking, like, it would be cool if I could literally generate the font atlas in JavaScript with Canvas and just load the texture into my WASM, and basically that would allow me to skip the entire font code in my WASM bundle if I were to publish this to the website. There's a couple of interesting things to explore at some point. But again, that's a lot of work, and it's probably not trivial to make this work reliably and unilaterally.
Yeah, it's definitely, the thing aside where they want the consistency across platforms, there is definitely a problem with the web right now, in that you have to either go use the platform or not, right? It's like it's that in between thing, that hooking into CSS and changing bits, that providing your own layout engine, that even providing your own font rendering, that kind of stuff. If you want any of that, you have to throw the whole lot away and start from scratch. Which, I mean, we talk about the extensible web a lot on this show, but that was the dream there, right? And it just hasn't been realized.
No, not really. But yeah, that was random thoughts by Surma on Canvas-based web apps. And we still made it to 50 minutes, so,
Yeah, it's still a long episode. We keep trying to do them shorter, but we're...
Nah. We're just too self-indulgent.
Yeah.
But maybe if we don't waste any time, we can just end the podcast here and call it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then we'll see each...
Did you have any parting words? Any wisdom?
Any final words? Wow. Oh, you said parting words. Sorry, I thought it was a bit more threatening than that.
I did make like a chop gesture with my hand, which you obviously can't see, but like, you know.
Oh, okay. And then, yes, and we'll be back whatever cadence we manage. And talk a bit about putting React in the browser.
Oh.
We've not done throw forwards before, but we'll give it a go.
Oh, that's... Yeah, I'm excited now. That sounds inflammatory as...
Yeah, and what will inevitably happen is something more important will come up to talk about, and we'll just like never talk about the React thing again because it'll be some like Apple will start trying to delete the platform again or whatever, and we'll have to do an episode about that.
Weirder things have happened.
All right then. Well, only one thing left to say, I suppose.
Yeah.
Happy next time.
Happy next time.
Bye. All right. Oh, we're cutting. Oh, amazing. All right.